Hello, everyone, and welcome to Islander Sewing Systems, Tuesdays at 2. I'm Janet Prey, and I'm so glad you joined us today. So, let me see. I think we have a couple of things I want to mention before we get to. I have three demos for you today, so it's kind of fun. Um, yes, the shirt challenge, and if you get our newsletter, or read our Facebook posts, you know we have a shirt challenge going on. And we like to make the shirt challenge more about you winning new skills, going outside your average comfort zone and developing some new skills. And but we do have prizes as well, and everyone who finishes a garment will get one. You can read about that on Facebook. I don't have the details right in front of me, but April 1st is the deadline. And you can take any one of our shirt patterns or our blouse sloper patterns, shirt sloper patterns, and adapt it to make a new style. It could just be a different sleeve or a different cuff or a different collar, add pockets, something to make it a little bit different. Let's see. Oh, I want to mention that chambray is on sale. We have all four colors in again. And it's one of the nicest shirt fabrics you could ever get. It's soft, it's got a little drape to it, and it's very, very pretty. So all four of those colors are in, and if you decide to purchase before Monday, you can get the 15% discount. The code is on in the newsletter. Do you remember the code? Chambray. The code is chambray. 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 And in the previous newsletter, I actually gave a definition for chambray. So if it's a newer term for you, that might give you some insight as to whether you would like that fabric. Well, today's topic is about making changes to patterns, and we're going to try and do that throughout the next couple of months to give you some ideas, to bolster your confidence. And so we've asked people to send in what they would like us to explain to them how to make or demonstrate. So we're going to get to that very soon. All right, so this is all about, back during COVID, we started a program called Stop the Insanity. And exactly what Stop the Insanity means is stop buying so many patterns and stop buying a new pattern for every single thing you want to make. If you have a well-fitting shirt pattern, or you have taken the time to fit a sloper and you have a nice sloper pattern, that's where you should start with everything. So if you've got a well-fitting shirt pattern, you haven't made a sloper, but you've got a nice basic shirt pattern, that's where you start, and then you can make the changes. Long sleeve, short sleeve, full sleeve, puff sleeve, bishop sleeve, you name it. Stand-up collar, no collar, convertible collar. You could do whatever you want once you just have those basics, which are the fronts, the back, and the sleeves. That's all you need to get started, and that's what a sloper is all about. So that's what we're going to do, is show you a few of the easy and fun pattern changes. One of the things that I want to caution you about, and the reason that we do things this way, obviously this is the way the professionals do it, they draft a pattern. But do they start with a plain piece of paper and a pen and a ruler every time? Oh no, never actually. They're more likely to pull their slopers, which they've designed sloper blocks for the bodice, sloper block for the pant, a sloper block for the skirt. And they might even have one for a jacket. So if they know what they want to design, they grab those slopers, and they're usually on tag board, but they look just like our paper patterns, and they trace around them, and then they start making the changes. The good news for them is this is their block that they designed in the first place, and they know the seam allowance. They know how much ease is in it. They know how it fits the body. So when they go to make changes to the pattern, they can take all that into consideration. But when some of us go to the store or go online and we order a pattern, we're really, really excited about that garment on the pattern cover. That's what I want to make. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know the fabric I'm going to get, all this great stuff. But we know whether the picture is beautiful or not all the patterns are created equal. And some of them are really created poorly. But you don't know that until you get it out. But then, if you've got a standard set of pattern alterations that you do, maybe for the bicep or rounded back or uneven shoulders, that's great if you, just like the designer, know what you're working with, have made it before you have the block. But to take a pattern cold in today's market and just make a standard alteration to it is very likely, you probably got about a 50% chance of it working, because you don't know if that person was a good pattern maker. And even if you do, you don't know what the ease is. You know, you can buy a McCall's pattern, and I'm not picking on McCall's at all. I've used their patterns for many years. All the big companies, they're drafted properly as long as they've been proofread. They are drafted properly because they use the better drafting equipment, but they use designers. So one designer might want 4 inches of ease. Another designer might only want 2. And then you get to people like Issey Miyake, who puts 10 and 12 inches of ease in the garment. So you don't know where you're going when you start this alteration. So you may have found in the past, when you tried that, it didn't work out so well. So that's another reason to consider the sloper as a place to start with all your garments. You can use the sloper on that McCall's pattern. I'm sorry.
You stopped.
I
don't understand. What?
Why would...
Okay.
I'm good to go?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, now I don't know where I stopped. Apparently our feed got interrupted, and I'm back now, but I was talking about Stop the Insanity. Did I discuss the difference in different eases? That's where I think I might have left off when I was talking about different ease in different pattern companies.
You stopped it. You don't know where to start because of the designer eases difference. Designer ease differences.
Okay, well that's good, because that's where I thought. So we didn't miss too much. Okay, so again, when you purchase a pattern, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, if you know the company, it still doesn't mean you know the structure of that, where that pattern started. Because if it wasn't a regular McCall's block, it could have been that designer's block. And they have a lot of designers now that create some of their better patterns. But again, their amount of ease probably isn't the same as the standard McCall. And the reason I use that is because one time I bought a McCall pattern when I was a teenager, or young 20s, and I made it up and it fit me perfect. And the next time I bought the same size, it was way too big. And I thought, well, they made a mistake. No, I did. I need to understand patterns better, because there was nothing wrong with the pattern, it just had more ease than I would appreciate. Okay, so, and everybody knows what ease means. Ease means that much bigger than your actual body. So we know there are some people who like to wear their clothes very snug to the body, and there are people who like to wear them very loose, and then the rest of us are like in the middle there. And that's what we're talking about as far as ease. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't have to be a pattern drafter to make some style and design changes in a pattern. And that's what we're here to help you with. So we're going to do some today. And I'm going to start out with adapting a new sleeve pattern into an existing pattern. So let's say, in this case, I have an Islander shirt pattern that fits perfectly, and I love it. But let's say I don't know how to draft a sleeve, but I love this cute little sleeve right here. And I actually do like that sleeve. It's got a little split in it, and it's very current. So if I want this sleeve, I don't want to go and make a muslin or try to fit this whole pattern, measure every piece, whatever. I'll take my Shirt Makers Express that I know fits me very well, just the way I like it. So I have that sleeve right here. Now, I want to go over the main rules of doing this. Some people call this Frankensteining, whatever you want to call it. I call it adaptation. But there are very important specific rules. And if you've tried this before and it failed, maybe one of these rules is how you missed it. So, you want to confirm, first of all, before you get started, is the seam allowance the same on both patterns? If they're not, you've got to adjust one of those pieces. So, if one's 3/8 and one's 5/8, you have to either add a quarter to one or take a quarter off the other, so that you make sure you're working with apples to apples or inches to inches, okay? So, the other rule that is extremely important is when you have the pieces that get sewn together in a garment, those seam lines need to stay the same, especially since we already know it fits you. So I don't want to mess with this seam. This sews to the arm side, right? The sleeve cap sews to the arm side. I don't want to mess with that because my arm side fits me perfect. I love the way the shirt hangs on my body. So I'm going to make sure I maintain that sleeve cap, and now I know it will effortlessly sew into the body of my Shirt Makers Express. Now, I've taken this Butterick pattern, and now what I want to do is line up this pattern and superimposed over the top of the other one. But here's a very important rule. Somebody told me they have their notepad ready. The straight of grain line on the pattern underneath and the straight of grain line on the one on top must be perpendicular. Parallel. So they have to be this. So what you would do is you would measure. I can see this. I'm not sure they can, but I can see through this tissue to see the straight of grain on the original pattern. And then I'm going to measure just like you do when you're measuring to make sure it's on the fabric straight. Make sure these are exactly, so they're not twisted in any way. Everything's straight. Now, all I have to do, now I'm not worried about the cap because this sleeve has a much higher cap. I don't want that. I want the cap I had. So I'm just going to line up the underarm. I'm going to keep that line straight. And the one thing you can see that is different is this ends up over here lower than the original. But remember, we don't want to mess with the original because it fits us. So for this purpose, I'm ignoring that because I do have to keep it straight. I could do something but then it wouldn't hang right. So straight, same distance on both sides. Now we can just trace around this pattern and we can follow the instructions for the treatment at the bottom of the sleeve, but we know we can sew it in to our original pattern like that because we've done it several times. So that's how you adapt a new, without knowing pattern drafting, all you have to do is find a pattern that you've got in your stash that has the sleeve that you want. And this is how you do it. All right, before I go further, I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions.
Okay. Now, if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in. We might not answer them that second, but we want to make sure we answer all your questions. We're really hoping to get a larger number even this time than we've gotten before in this challenge. And I called this 2025 Shirt Challenge and Discovery. Because as you try to make some of these changes, or not try, as you make these changes, you're going to learn a little something. Maybe something that I've already said has just set off a light bulb for you. Okay, so let's go on to, what was her name? Remember?
Barbara, was it?
Her last name started with an A. Ooh. Anyway, it's in the newsletter. And maybe she'll pipe up. because I know she's here because she said she was going to have her notebook. So she might just, if you sent this picture,
From Barbara.
okay, Barbara. Barbara. She likes the collar. Can I lay it down or should I hold it up?
I'll hold it up.
Okay, she likes the collar and she likes the sleeve. So I'm going to start with the collar because that is going to be the very easiest thing to do. All right. So again, I'm taking my original pattern. We could again say it's the Shirt Makers Express. And I trace out the regular collar. And I know that this is the seam that sews to the neckline. So I can make no changes to this seam. But I can make any changes I want past that seam. So when I look at this collar, I see that it is much deeper than a regular collar. That's part of its charm. And then the angle that it comes away from the face might be another thing that she liked about this particular garment. So I trace this out, and you can fold your pattern just like this to kind of see what's going to happen with the angle of the collar. And you can always change the angle of this collar. You can make it more severely pointed, or you can make it duller. And all you do, remembering we cannot change this seam. The neckline seam can't be changed. So we start right at the neckline seam, and we can make a severe change as that. Now, our collar would probably be a little more similar to the shape you're seeing in hers. And, Barbara, you could even, I know you said it was rounded, and I didn't see much rounding, but you could experiment with rounding this or rounding this corner down here. And you do it in muslin, and you don't, really, as long as you don't mess with that neckline, you don't even have to sew it onto something. You can just put it on your neck, and you can see, is that the look I'm going for? And again, keeping the seam that's going to sew to the garment intact, I made this collar much deeper. So what I did, you could do it any way you like. You could split the existing collar in half and then spread it apart and connect the edges. That will work just fine. All I did was I just came down, I just drew down another inch and across and made sure it was going to match down here. Now it's going to be bigger down here than the original. So when I go to make those lines, here's my collar again, and I'm seeing that I could take this, like I said, she could round this just like that. She could take this, leave, again, don't mess with that seam line, that neckline, change the angle like that, and then you could even round that. So it is just that simple to make a different looking collar. And this particular collar, you know, I had, do I have them here? No. Underneath yours, I've got the collar page, Brenda, I think. Yeah, that stack there. Yep, give me one. Thanks. All right. So let's just briefly talk about the collar. And so often when people write me and say, will you show me how to do XYZ? They don't know the terminology. And that's okay, but let's talk about that. This is a convertible collar, and there's a tutorial on YouTube where on Tuesdays at 2 last year, I showed you exactly how to draft a convertible collar. A convertible collar does not have a collar stand. And we even showed you how to put a little faux stand in the back so that the collar will stand up on the back of your neck and look really stylish. This is a traditional collar with a stand. That's what's in most shirts. And you can use just the stand or you can use the collar. Then there is a flat collar, which you may have recognized the Peter Pan collar. Those are drafted so they lay flat against the body, completely flat. So it's just going to lay right here. It's not going to have a little lift or any movement. It's going to lay right flat against the front of your shirt. But that is the basic 3 types of collars. There's many variations on those, but those in the drafting world are the 3 that you start with. All right, so Barbara, I hope that this is making a lot of sense to you. Another thing I want to talk about in this pattern here, I can see that this is a nice woven cotton shirting, which is soft. And you see how far down this collar goes onto the shoulder. I don't want stiff interfacing in this particular style collar because I want it to lay down. Otherwise, it's going to lift up. So, I would use the medium firm interfacing, the shirt maker's medium firm that we carry in the collar stand so that it stands up nice. You always want some firmness in there. But on this collar, I would only use the light and stable. I might use it on both pieces, the top and the bottom, or the collar and the collar facing, or I might only use it in the top because I don't want this to be too stiff. So you kind of have to do a test and see what works best. But I think that will also make the difference in your collar being successful, is using the right limited amount of interfacing. Okay. Okay.
Do you want a question from the previous?
Sure, I would love a question.
Okay. Linda would like you to go over the sleeve cap tracing again.
Okay.
So let me get...
All right. And Linda, you do know you can rewind these, and it'll be on Facebook or on YouTube this afternoon, most likely. Brenda might not be able to get it up, but she almost always does. Do you have physical therapy today?
No.
Okay, so it'll probably be up. So you can always rewind and watch as many times as you want. So what you want to do is trace out the sleeve that you're starting with, the one that you know fits you well. If you have such a sleeve, that's what you want to use, such a pattern with a shirt. You do not mess with this seam. This is the sleeve cap that sews to the arm side. So you can't make any changes to this or it's not going to fit the arm side. So that's what we know. We have to stay with the sleeve cap. But you don't have to stay with the sleeve bottom. So we're going to take this sleeve that we like that has that cute little treatment on the bottom. We're going to line it up at the underarm as best we can. And then we're going to make sure by measuring from the straight of grain on the original pattern, the one on the bottom, and the straight of grain on the new pattern, so that we know this sleeve's going to hang right. Because if you mess this up and you had cut it like that, your sleeve's going to twist like crazy. So straight of grain is extremely important in sleeves, as it is with everything else. Then you just finish tracing this off, which will no doubt connect, and you'll just keep on coming down around this one. Now you can use the pattern guide for this one to know how to do the treatment at the bottom, but all the rest of it's sewn together just like your original shirt pattern. Okay, anything else, Brent?
No.
All right. So, and again, I want to mention it again for those of you who might be new. We do this on Facebook Live once a month, and then we upload it to YouTube. So you can see it either place. It's your choice. And we have lots and lots of really good tutorials and videos on YouTube. And our channel is youtube.com/Islander Sewing Systems. All right. You can also put in Janet Pray, you'll find it. All right, so we took care of the collar, and we talked about the interfacing. So now I want to talk about this sleeve. This sleeve is gathered up here. It's not just eased in. It has gathers. That type of sleeve is called a puff sleeve. Now, she doesn't want a short puff sleeve, but she wants a puff sleeve. So all of this is like gathered in. This is where you have to do the gathering on a sleeve. All right, so in order to do that, we're going to follow the instructions in Pattern Making Made Easy, starting on page 245. All right, so what it says to do is make sure that you have your bicep line. The bicep line goes just under the cap seam allowance. Do you see where it is ending up? And straight across to the other side. That's your bicep line. Your bicep is right here. And that line exactly is where that sits. So you don't want to mess with that because you already know the sleeve fits you. Okay? So we're going to draw that across on our pattern. So I've done that. And I kept on going. So let's see. All right. So let me, I'll just demo it. That'll be good. And my red pen flew away. What, I have it in my hand. Jeez. All right, let's say we're making the extra small. This has 3/8 inch seam allowance. But I want to make my seam allowance crosses here so I know exactly, oh, let me get this one. Okay, 3/8, where that's going to go. Okay, so 3/8. 3/8. Okay, so that's where this one goes. All right, so that's the seam allowance. Then you're just going to go right straight through and draw your bicep line across. Now that's the bicep line for this size, not these two, because I wanted to get right within the seam allowance. So we're going to draw that bicep line on a fresh pattern. We've traced this out because today we're going to call this our sloper sleeve. This is our sloper sleeve. You never use your sloper sleeve. You trace it out so that it always stays perfectly intact, because we all know what happens when we start cutting around a pattern. Pretty soon we've whittled away some of the cutting lines and maybe some of the notches and things. So we keep our sloper pristine. So we're going to make that line. Then we must divide the sleeve because we have to make it bigger. So stay with me. This might be new to you. So I have drawn, as you see in the demonstration, or in the photograph, that one's folded, so I use this one. Mine's folded in the opposite direction, but it's the same thing because we're working with the back. So we found the center of the sleeve, we folded it on the center line, and we're only using the back right now. So don't use the front. Now, what we do is section it off into 1-inch sections and draw the line from the top to the bottom. Are you with me? Now you're going to number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, depending on, usually you make them about 1 inch and usually you spread them about 1/2 inch, but there's no specific rule. There are designs or costumes where they want a whole lot more fullness, and you would do accordingly. But let's just stick with this one for now, since for a lot of you it's the first time you've ever done anything like this. So we've drawn those lines in. Now, we also need to prepare a piece of paper, fold it in half, with that half that we've made those 1-inch strips in and numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We trace around it. We draw that bicep line in all the way across. I like it out here where I can see it so that I know, I can't see underneath, but I can certainly see beyond it. Okay, so we want that. Now we'll take the one that we made into 1-inch strips. Now, trust me, this is not complicated. It's not complicated, so stay with me. All right, so I'm going to cut on the center line, the first piece. And the more accurate you can be, especially in pattern making, the better off your garment's going to be. So don't do any estimating. Measure, make sure your lines are nice and straight, and make sure you're cutting on those lines. That's why I'm using the ruler. Sometimes I don't do too bad cutting a nice straight line that's already drawn for me, but I almost never screw up when I use the ruler. Okay, if you have any questions, say them out, because this will just be another second or two and I'll be ready to show you. I want to show you one quick thing. If you can see that little red X down here, my line got a little off kilter, and when I noticed it, I redrew it in. But if I was to come back an hour later, which one was it? So you always take a little red pen and put an X on a line that is not the line to cut on. A little red X will help you out, and then you don't have to redraw it all. I draw all my patterns in ink. I would never draw a pattern with a pencil. And there's two very good reasons. I'm going to let you guys guess. If somebody can come up with both reasons, there'll be a prize. One free pattern. All right. Now what we're going to do, I'm still waiting for those guesses, but in the meantime, here's what.
Let's see how I somehow don't have columns. What happened?
We're going to take section number 1. Oh, I got to get this a little bit closer to me.
Okay.
All right, get it all lined up. I'm going to use repositionable tape. It's called removable tape by Scotch. And you got to have this for pattern making. Even just for sewing, when you rip a pattern or you want to just tape something down. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got, it's a more accurate line. I have, because lines from pencils can be wider.
That's pretty good. Not quite it, but
I have pencil lines can widen as the pencil goes. Don't get graphite all over the place. The lines are thinner and won't smudge like pencil can.
okay. All right. The truth is, yes, a pencil could make a finer or wider line, especially if you start out with it sharpened and you keep on working. But you could use a mechanical pencil and it would stay sharp, right? The problem is, for me, especially because I do have a sight difficulty. Oh, there. I'll lose my head if it wasn't attached. Is that the pencil markings on the page kind of glare, and you can lose them. You know, they kind of like, where is that exactly? A dark blue or a black ink pen is going to show up better, number 1. Number 2, I either use a ballpoint or gel because it glides. And if you want a nice smooth line, you don't want to be messing with a pencil, or and don't use a magic marker, because then your line's going to be too fat and too ambiguous. Okay, so those are the reasons we use a nice dark ink, black or blue. Now what I'm doing is I'm measuring a 1/2 inch out from this, was this the number 1 piece? Okay, and so now I'll take number 2 and I'm going to tape it 1/2 inch away from number 1. Okay. Now another 1/2 inch. Wait a minute, that's only a 1/4. What did I do in my first one? Oh, that's a 1/2. Okay. Oops. Okay. This will be better. And you can make that line a lot longer so that you can lay that paper right against it. You could go all the way down if you wanted to. I'm just trying to do it a little bit quicker for the sake of demonstrating. Okay. Now, this particular sleeve is going to be straight across the bottom, which would probably get like a little cuff. There are sleeves, like this one, where the hemline would curve, but that's not what we're doing, so we're going to keep our hemline straight.
Battery's gonna go again.
Is it blinking again?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. All right, well, hurry.
Oops.
All right, tape. You want to keep this straight along the bottom. Eventually, they're going to be higher than the cap itself is, as you probably can see. Can they see this, Brent? What I'm doing here? So you see, I'm up above the original cap now, merely because we're spreading it. Just always keep in mind, we're doing this to the back, and there's something different for the front. All right, so 4 is going to go here. And I'm going to stop when I get these on and make sure everybody's following along before we go to the next step. One more. And I will admit to not being extremely perfect right now. Oh, yeah, that one's too low.
So we're gonna lose them. Should I try to change the battery? Tell them.
Yeah.
No, tell
But-
them we're gonna lose them for a second.
You think that battery's charged? We're having trouble with our batteries today, so Brenda's going to try changing the battery so we don't lose you. But
We will lose, but let's see if I can. How do we get this out of here?
okay,
Oh, where did you find that clip?
this way. All right, do I have a 1/2 here? Yes, I do. All right, so here's number 5 going right into place, and I'm going to bring this around so you can see it better. And all right, and all right. So now, I didn't think.
They want to know if you have a specific pen.
Oh, you know what? No. Like I said, I like the nice little gel pens, and I like a nice ballpoint. I don't like it to be really thin. I don't want the extra fine. Just a medium point is fine. And a ballpoint is what we started out with years ago, because we didn't have gel pens either. But it rolls. You know, it was a roll. So it just glides right across the page, and it doesn't interrupt your energy of trying to make a nice curve or a nice straight line. Okay, so as you can see here, you can see the original line. Is this showing up pretty good, Brenda?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I didn't get quite over far enough on this one. I didn't make a line. Let me see. Yeah, it's more like that. Okay, so now we can't cut like this, right? We can't have a choppy cap, so we've got to smooth that cap out. And again, I'm working from page 245 and page 246. So on 246, it tells us that we have to add a 1/2 inch up here and a 1/2 inch down there. Okay, so I am going to do that. Just measure down the 1/2 inch here. And a 1/2 inch up here. All right. So now, as you can see, this is much lower, but it needs to end up back over here at 5. Yes. It's weird because mine is the reverse of the picture. And the reason is this drafter always drafted front on the right and back on the left. I was taught to do it the exact opposite. It doesn't matter, but your sleeve is in the opposite direct, your pattern piece. When you put it on the fabric and cut too, you've got both directions. But anyway, I think you understand. 1/2 inch, and now we have to connect it back to 5 on both of them in a nice, smooth gesture. So I know I'm here. Now I can smoothly go over there. But if that is not something you feel comfortable doing, you could always use something like the arm side ruler. And there you go. So this is our new line on the top that makes the new cap. It's a higher cap and it's much fuller. All right, now let me do the bottom for you. So the bottom just glides back up to meet 5, right at 5. So here's where I got to end up. Here's where I have to end up, right here. And here's where I'm starting. So, and you could also use a curved ruler for that, if you needed to. And that's not going to quite come back here, here, probably about there. And there you go. And there is the hem line. This is the back of the sleeve. We've extended a 1/2 inch on the top and the bottom. And then we've reshaped the bottom and the cap. Now, we're almost done. It might have seemed a little confusing for a second, but unless you ask me a question, I'm pretty sure you're with me. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to trace this sleeve cap to the front. So I'm going to put a piece of tracing paper in here. And I'm going to trace this line. And this line. The 2 new lines that we made. Nothing else, just these little guys. Okay? Because I already traced the whole sleeve out, right? So now we're going to open it up. Oh, I did not trace the whole sleeve. Shame on me. Okay, so let me trace down the rest of that line. All right. All right. All right. Now we have a mirror image of the back. But what you know, if you listen to me, the front and the back of the sleeve cannot be identical. So there's one little step we have to accomplish. But let's remember, this is the front, this is the back. We got a double notch here. I don't have my single notch here, but that's okay for right now. We have to change this area right here, the underarm area. So we get our sloper sleeve. Remember this, we called our sloper. This is the front. And you can see the front and the back don't have the same shape. Is that a good view?
I think so.
Maybe closer.
Yeah. There.
All right. So we don't want, it wouldn't hang right. So we're going to take this and we're going to line it up. Now make sure we got straight grain. I'm not going to take the time to measure it, but let's just say I did. So we're going to measure and make sure that it's nice and straight. All right. Then all we have to do is take this little divot out here. And I'll do it in red so you can see, because that's the way the front of the sleeve works. Oh, this is the sleeve we're working on. Okay. All right, now I just did the reverse because I told you if you put a red X on, you don't use that line. But this is our new cutting line. And this is, can they see that tracing? Because this is our tracing, and you can go ahead and connect the dots on that. And if you don't have a tracing wheel, it's a really good idea. This saves you a lot of time in pattern making. This is curved. So anyway, we just connect the dots, or just cut on the dots, because they're your cutting line. All right, and then, almost forgot my notch. Here's my notch. So this is the line we're not going to use anymore. So this is our whole new cap here. And now you have your puff sleeve. Now, in order to accomplish this, you cannot put this in like we normally do at Islander in the flat, because this is a whole lot more fabric, and this actually is going to take that double row of gathering stitch to pull it up and evenly set it inside that arm side. And that would be between the notches. See, we didn't do it past here. This is the area that has to be gathered in. So you could make a little mark, and then you can do your 2 rows of gathering stitches, one above the seam allowance and one below. That will really help you get nice, even gathering. So that's the top of the sleeve. Barbara, are you with me? Isn't Barbara?
Yes, but I don't see her.
Oh, okay. Well, she's probably busy taking notes. All right, so there's our little, yep. And of course, especially if it's your first time doing this, but I'll tell you what, I do it every time. I'm going to test it first. I'm not just going to go over to my $25 yard fabric and cut out 2 sleeves and say, oh, I hope it works. No, I'm going to test this first, especially first time. The simplest thing, you could just make a tiny little mistake. Catch it before you do it in your good fabric. All right, now I want to talk just briefly about the bottom of that sleeve. So the bottom of her sleeve looked fairly gathered to me. It's not just the normal. In a regular shirt, generally there's a couple of pleats. This is gathered. It's a fuller sleeve. It's going to have a nice poof at the cuff. That's called a bishop sleeve. And I won't take the time to demonstrate it, but it's very similar in the reverse of what we just did. So you can have a bishop sleeve that has just a gathered cuff right here, and the book will explain to you how to add that length, because your sleeve, if I'm using my sloper, my sleeve stops at the wrist. So I know I've got to add in order to have this gather go past my wrist. So you'll have some, but you're going to do the same thing. We're going to split this apart, the back only, and then we're going to spread it. But we spread it at the bottom, not at the top so much. Let me see, there's no spreading at the top. So chances are you're going to cut up almost to the top and leave a little hinge. And you're going to spread these apart on a new fresh piece of paper. You're going to do some adding if a cuff is going on here. You're going to add 1.5 inches longer, and it's going to have kind of a different shape to the bottom. That's the shape you need if you're going to add a traditional cuff like we have here. So again, this is page 250 and page 251, and it's so similar to what I just did that I'm sure you'll be able to do it. Now, I know this is the sleeve she's looking for. Test the cap before you do the bottom. Make sure you got the cap right. Then take that sleeve pattern and do this to the bottom. Don't try to do it at the same time because, well, you can't. You absolutely cannot. And, but just take your time and go in a couple of different stages. If you make it in muslin, you can save your samples and you'll know what you did for another time. So that is how to make a bishop sleeve. There is also, in Connie's book, there's also the exaggerated bishop sleeve. And that would be a lot fuller at the bottom. Let me see. My book, I'm worried it's going to fall apart. Yeah, this is the exaggerated. So see how much farther they spread this one apart? And it actually does get spread at the cap too. This might be where you want to go. Check this out. And again, I'm talking to Barbara. There's the gatherings up here because she's spread it a little bit up here. And then you've got your exaggerated bishop at the bottom, which will give you a nice full at the bottom. So it's all up to you. But this would be a one-off. You do all this at one time. So that might be your way. But if you don't want that much gathering at the bottom, or you don't want the cuff, then do it in 2 stages. All right. Any questions? Who got closest to why we use an ink pen?
Let's see.
It's okay if there's more than one.
There was Joan. Let's see. It's a more accurate line. Because lines when pencil can be wider.
Yeah.
Pencil lines can widen as the pencil dulls. Don't get graphite all over the place.
Yeah.
The lines are thinner and won't smudge like pencil can.
Okay.
Pencil smears, pencil is wider and varies more.
I'm so glad everybody at least understands that you don't use a pencil. And you don't use a marker for the exact same reason. But my primary, what I was looking for, is that you can make a nice smooth line.
Yeah, those are my responses. I don't.
Okay, well,
We'll take a look.
how many are there?
One, two, three, four, five. I think 5.
All right. So we will choose the first one to get a free pattern. And the 4 after that will get a $10 credit for our website.
Okay.
So,
I don't have you on.
so whoever came in first with the answer about why you don't use a pencil, they were all good answers. Not exactly what I was looking for. So keep in mind the other reason to use a pen is that it will glide. And you can make nice, you'd be surprised how much easier it is to make a nice curved line and get where you want to go with a pen that glides as opposed to a pencil that has some friction going on. So that's the clear reason. Plus, you can see it better. And of course, we don't use a Sharpie, we don't use a marker, and we wouldn't use a pencil that wasn't a mechanical pencil because the line will vary in widths. But I still wouldn't even use a mechanical pencil because it's going to be too thin. And again, depending on how the light hits it, sometimes the line kind of disappears to your sight. So, good answer. So, good thinking.
Linda said, would you use the same technique for a bell sleeve? How do you determine the spread amount for a flowing bell?
Okay, so for a bell sleeve, you would test it, but yeah, you're going to spread the bottom, not the top. So it's going to be just like this. It's going to be very similar to the bishop. Wait a minute, it must be this way. Words. It's going to be very similar to not the exaggerated, but the regular bishop. Must have been the other way. Yes, this one. Because you can automatically see it's belling. Then you gotta you're gonna have to test it to make sure that you should have though a nice your hem is nice. So here you would add, if you wanted to gather it but this is not, you don't want to gather it, you want a bell. So decide how long you want your bell, and then you do the same thing. And I think Linda has this book.
Yes.
Yeah, so page 250. So if you've got a sloper, and your sloper indicates where your elbow is, which hopefully it does, then you say, okay, I want my bell sleeve here. I'm going to measure from my elbow to here. That's how long that sleeve wants to be, plus a hem. So keep that in mind and follow these directions. But you won't need to do this because you're not putting a cuff on it. So that's that. That'll make a bell.
Okay, I have questions not to do with.
Okay, any questions? We'll take any sewing or drafting questions.
Someone would like to know if you're getting the white fabric, the plain white shirting.
Okay, so someone's asked if we're getting our premium white shirting in. Well, we're hoping to, but as luck would have it, the company that we bought from for 25 years sold to another company in another state, and when I went to order it, they're out of it. And they have to wait another month, maybe 2, to get it in because of Chinese New Year. So if any of you have ever been familiar with doing business with China or Taiwan, this time of year, they take almost a month off. Some people take more. It's their grand vacation of the year, but they just don't do business. So we have to sit and wait, and they don't ship. Then when they do ship, it takes a month to get here because it's coming on a boat, and then it's got to come across the country. So there you go. Sorry, I don't have it. I wish I did. But I'm going to tell you the one I do have is gorgeous. And it reads as totally white. It just has some woven, fine little striping in it. I'm going to get it and put it at the camera. Maybe they can see it. It's so deceptive on the camera. So Brenda, you do what you can to get close enough so that they can see that stripe in there. Because it's like the stripe itself is shinier than the fabric. And that's the only way it really shows up. You can see it?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I can see it in the.
And as soon as we can get that premium white in, and like I said, I think it's going to be another month or so, we will put it in the newsletter that it's available. In the meantime, remember, we have all these beautiful chambrés. And I even bought pink. That one's, I think that pink sold out the fastest, and I never bought pink before. So here's the pink. And what chambray, if you know anything about weaving, I'll explain it to you, but the warp threads are the threads that go up and down. The weft go back and forth. So this has a warp of, let's see, it looks like the weft. Anyway, I think the warp is white, and then the weft is the color. It doesn't matter, it's one or the other. I'm not a weaver, but I can tell you that's what they do with denim, only it's a much heavier yarn. So you had this, it doesn't really look variegated or anything like that. It's just very subtle, but it softens the color, and it's just very pretty. So anytime you see the end of the bolt, you can see that's the white threads. And then, so it's two colors woven together, or white and a color. So we have like a really beautiful robin's egg blue. I don't know what we call them on the website, but they're just very pretty. And they're good year-round fabrics, but they do breathe really well. So they make just as good of a shirt in the summer. I won't get the charcoal, but we also have charcoal.
One more question.
Okay.
Okay. Jeannie said, I've made a dress that buttoned in the front, which had a V-neck. The lining flipped out to the front, no matter how much I pressed it. There was a 2-inch strip of fine interfacing on both sides beneath the buttons and buttonholes. Do you have any idea how I could prevent this?
Okay, so I'm going to have to ask. Okay, so it's V-neck. Does it have a placket down the front for buttoning? Should have buttoned up, but it was a V. And where is that lining coming from? It's coming up and out of here.
I don't know.
I might need a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where the lining's coming from because most shirts don't have lining. So it might be a facing. And in that case, I could probably help you, but I'll need to see a picture to be able to really give you clear help. But facings should never pop out. And quite literally, the only time they do is in homemade patterns. Home sewing patterns, they do not give you they do not give you the extra directions in how to treat your facings. And facings should be, if it's on a curve or a V, it should be, the seam allowance should be no more than 1/4 of an inch, and it should be stitched down to the facing. And then it will never turn back out if it's done properly. So that's what I'll need to see, what's popping out, and I'm sure I can help you. And if you send me the picture, maybe we'll share it here for others. But we have really specific instructions, and you'll find them in our industrial shortcuts. And when we put a facing on sleeveless, we put a facing on a neckline that doesn't have a collar. We do it all in one operation. It's all one piece. The neckline and the sleeveless, so it comes a shape like this. We do all the understitching in the video to show you exactly how to do that understitching. And when you do that understitching, that neckline is so beautiful. It's kind of a work of art. It just looks so great. And then we show you how to, it's a little bit different way of doing that side seam, but it automatically locks the facings into the side seam, and there's no weights coming out now.
It says there was no placket. It was a dress. The entire bodice was lined. It was an independent pattern.
Ah, yeah, understitching. She didn't do
probably.
understitching, that's why it's happening. Yeah. And if it was, I thought it was purchased. She says it was a pattern.
It was a pattern.
Yeah. So many people that have created patterns in the last 15 or 20 years, particularly the last 10, don't have drafting experience. And they're using extremely inexpensive software. So they might be using a software that costs under $1,000. and it's made for the hobbyist, but it is not stellar. It will not fit every person. If you have a D cup, don't even go with any of those home softwares because they're not going to work. What they do, and this might be hard to understand, but what they do when they find a larger measurement in the bust and a smaller down here is it takes the whole arm side and rotates it. So the part of your arm side that's supposed to be under your arm is back here. And the part that's supposed to be on the top is over here. You can't put a sleeve in there to have it hang right. The whole side seam is distorted. So we have tested, I haven't tested any recently, but I don't think there are any new ones on the market. But I've tested almost all of them, and that's exactly what they do. As soon as you get to a D cup, you're out of business. And oftentimes they create sleeves that are symmetrical and arm size that are symmetrical when they should never be. And I've talked about that till I'm sure you've all heard it 100 times. But the sleeve should never be symmetrical. I don't care what kind of fabric you're using. Your body is not symmetrical from front to back. In the front, we go hollow right here. Oh, that's where that seam is coming, right? In the back, we round out. You've got a muscle back here. So this, from here around to the underarm, is longer. And this, from here to here, is shorter. If you make them the same length, they're not going to hang right. And you'll end up what so many, and I know many people recognize this one because they've bought those generic t-shirts. And they make the sleeves symmetrical and the arm size symmetrical. But as you're wearing it, you keep doing this. You're choking because it keeps sliding backwards. It's because there's not enough fabric in the back. So the back keeps saying, hey, I need that. It can't sit here. It's too short for it to sit here. So it'll just keep pulling back, and you never could fix that. You have to have a non-symmetrical arm side and sleeve.
She's going to send you a picture.
Okay, good.
We're running long. Do you want another question? Or?
Yeah, we'll take one more question. We're running long, and that could mean we get shut off again from our batteries.
Looks good.
So, yeah, let's go ahead.
Wait a minute. How do I lower the front neckline to make a flat band instead of a collar on the Shirt Makers Express pattern?
Okay.
I don't want it to come up my neck, but want to keep the button-up look with the top open.
So what I'm imagining is she wants the neckline to lay flat against her collarbone right here and not be up like this.
Stand.
So that means, of course, if you have the book, it's going to be in there, but that means that neckline is wider. And so what you're actually doing, I can't tell you exactly how to do it, but I can give you the general concept. And that is, okay, so you've got a neckline. Let's say it buttons up here, okay? So when I put this collar on, this neckline is so narrow that that collar is going to stand up and sit up on my neck. So I don't want to add to that neckline. I want to cut my stand out of that neckline. So here's my collar stand that you want to lay against your neck. You see? So you're going to take it out of here. So let's say that you want 1.5 inches. So you're going to cut that out 1.5 inches front and back. That's your new pattern piece. But now you got to add seam allowance to it. And the part you cut away of the shirt, then you got to add the seam allowance to that so that you can sew this back. If that makes sense. So again, this is your neckline, and we don't want to add to the neckline. We want to keep the neckline against our body. So we're going to cut our band out of here and sew it back in. There's your shoulder seams. Center back. Now, did that make sense?
Hang on.
So as you can see, it's not an addition, it's just a change in the neckline.
Yes, she said yes.
Okay, good, good, good. And again, you know, if you have the drafting book, that will help you a lot. If you don't, just go with some muslin. And you know, another good thing to do that we do with first-time pattern makers is we have them pin the, once they've created the pattern and they are convinced they have the right amount of seam allowance and every piece is going to fit together, we have them pin them together on the seam allowance. Which means you do have to add your seam allowance all the way around your pattern. And as you can probably see on some of my work, I don't see it right here now, but I do like stitching line, a little dash, a little dash, a little dash, and I do it in red all the way around the pattern. You know what it is, and then you can identify that. So, I don't know what I was saying. What was I addressing there? Just that neckband?
Neckband and
Yeah.
stitching line.
Stitching line, right. So you can always, you can take any pattern piece. You could take your shirt pattern piece. Let's see. Okay, you could take your front shirt pattern piece, all right? And you could cut it right up the center and use two different fabrics. But when you cut that pattern apart, you got to add a seam allowance to both pieces so it ends up back the exact shape and width it needs to be to fit with all the other pattern pieces. So you can cut things up all kinds of different ways and have tons of fun with it. Just the thing that most people have a problem with, they get excited and maybe one of the pieces they forgot to add the seam allowance back on. And then the minute you do your test, you go, you know exactly what you did wrong because it's 5/8 inch too short or 3/8 inch too short, whatever your seam allowance was supposed to be.
One last question.
Okay.
Somebody wanted to know if you embroidered your top.
I did not embroider my top. It's a Johnny Was. And, you know, when machine embroidery first started, it was all the rage. And I've had two different machines that machine embroider. But I found it wasn't my thing. And at that time, I said, well, I don't even wear embroidered clothes. So I'm not going to do this. So I just didn't get into the embroidery for very long. But then I found this company called Johnny Was, and they have, their yardage is embroidered. And so, and there's fabrics out there now, especially if you could get to New York. You can buy yardage, it's already embroidered. But what's cool about these, I believe this one's embroidered in the back too, right? Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they do a beautiful job with their garments, and their arm size and necklines are done correctly. So I'm happy to pay a little bit extra, add a couple of pieces that I didn't make. Because for those of us who sew most of our wardrobe, it's kind of a treat to buy something. But I want it to be excellent, because otherwise I'll say, well, I could have done a better job. So when I do buy, that's the kind of garments I look for.
All right. That's it, everybody. Thank you for the information.
Yeah, you are so welcome. I'm so glad ever how many of you joined us, and we're really looking for you to just stretch yourself a little bit. If stretching yourself just means to change the sleeve of the cuff to a sleeve without a cuff, or adding extra pockets, any little detail that you can push yourself to do or change you make, you're going to be so happy with. Our camp shirt, there was one, please forgive me, I forget, I don't keep everybody's name straight, but she did. She always wanted to do this, so she pushed herself, and she did a stand-up collar with a ruffle on it. And I think she had a ruffle on the sleeve too, didn't she? She inserted it in that seam, just a tiny little stand. It was great, and she was so pleased with herself that she did that. And again, same pattern, entirely different look. So thank you all for coming, and consider that challenge. And if you have any questions about the challenge, about making a shirt, what pattern to start with, or making a slope, we are here. Just send us an email to islandersewing@comcast.net, and you can find that on our website as well. Should you lose it, but just send us an email. We answer our emails probably 5 days a week. We're only in the office for the phone 3 days a week. So it's a whole lot easier, especially if you live in a different time zone, to send us an email. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And that's it for today. But again, we were using Pattern Making Made Easy by Connie Crawford. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions as you go through this process, if you want to try this, just send me an email. Glad to help you out. I'm Janet Prey. I'm here with Brenda Rogerson behind the camera. Reluctantly, I might say. And we're just happy to be here, happy to be of service and with all your sewing needs. Thanks again, and we'll see you again real soon. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. Bye.